A couple of years ago, Sony slimmed down the PS5, and now it looks like the digital edition may be getting even slimmer. Just not in a good way. It's Sunday, so let's get sensational. I'm Mike, and I'm back to talk about the gaming news and rumors. Like this new rumor about the digital edition of the PS5 in Europe. As we talked about recently, all three console makers have done price increases in the US, but Sony and Microsoft have previously done price increases in several other countries and regions, including some areas in Europe. Well, it looks like Sony may be making a hardware change to some European PS5s to cut costs. So according to leaker Bilbo Kuhn, the digital PS5 may be getting a storage downgrade in Europe from 1 terabyte to 825 gigabytes. So basically 175 gigabytes less, excluding the amount of storage that the OS uses. And this is supposed to start on September 13th. Now, according to this rumor, the standard PS5 storage will stay the same. It's only the digital edition in Europe that's being changed. Of course, this is a rumor right now, as Sony hasn't confirmed that this is happening yet, but it's a weird choice if it is true. Now, I know that the original PS5 had an 825 gig SSD, and it went up to 1 terabyte with the slim model, so it's not like there aren't PS5s with that amount of storage, but reducing the amount of storage after increasing it with a new model, it just feels really weird. We'll see if this A ends up being true and B eventually does come to other countries outside of Europe, which I hope not, but yeah, it's not a great situation. Unlike Sony's decision to release a game on Xbox, that actually seems to be a great situation for them. So Sony recently released Helldivers 2 on Xbox, and they even did some Halo ODST content for the game, and similar to when Microsoft released Forza Horizon 5 on PS5, Helldivers 2 is at the top of the Xbox sales charts. So according to data from Analia Analytics, Helldivers 2 has already sold 926,000 copies on Xbox within the first 6 days of release. And as a result, Helldivers 2 is now the top paid game on the Xbox store. And like I mentioned before, the same thing happened on PS5 when Forza Horizon 5 released. So it's kind of cool to see that there's interest on both sides to try the other consoles' exclusives. And one game that was almost an exclusive for Xbox was the new Perfect Dark before it was, of course, canceled. Well, according to the story, it was close to possibly being saved. So it seems like Xbox knew that Perfect Dark was in trouble and tried to find another publisher for the game. So according to a recent Bloomberg report, Xbox was looking for a publisher for Perfect Dark, which at the time was being developed by the studio The Initiative, with support from Crystal Dynamics, which we talked about last week. It led to them having to do layoffs. But either way, if this deal had worked out, both of those studios would have continued to develop the game with another publisher ultimately putting it out. Well, according to the report, it was Take-Two that they were in talks with to publish the game. But ultimately, they failed to reach an agreement due to the IP rights. From the sounds of it, Take-Two wanted the rights to the game if they published it, and Microsoft wasn't willing to give that up. So ultimately, that's what led to the whole thing falling through, according to the Bloomberg story. And it would make sense if this is true and the Xbox team tried to save the game, because it felt like they were putting a lot of hype behind it. I mean, it was supposed to be a big game from an IP that they own. And to be honest, I was surprised that it got scrapped even with them doing all the cuts. Now, I can understand Xbox not wanting to give up the IP rights to Take-Two, but ultimately the game still got canceled and they haven't put out a Perfect Dark in a very long time. But with Perfect Dark being canceled now and them still having ownership of the IP, I'm wondering what, if anything, they're going to do with Perfect Dark. But we do know what Nintendo is doing with the 3DS hardware, and that is absolutely nothing. So Nintendo started winding down 3DS support last year, and they already stopped repairs for the 3DS in August of 2024, and then the 2DS not too long after that. But there was one handheld in that family that still had support when it comes to repairs, and that was the 2DS XL, which makes sense because it was one of the ones that was released later in the generation. So since it came out later, they obviously supported it a little bit longer. Well, that has officially come to an end. So as of September 4th, Nintendo is no longer doing repairs for the 2DS XL, meaning that the repairs for the entire 3DS lineup are officially done. So realistically, it just means that Nintendo isn't going to be making parts for it anymore or doing their own first-party repairs, but even for DIY repairs, it may become hard to find parts over time. The only good-ish kind of thing is they sold a lot of 3DSs, which in theory could be parted out, so it shouldn't be an issue in the near future. But either way, if you have a 2DS XL, there is no longer a way to get a first-party repair from Nintendo. But if you have an alternative handheld like a Steam Deck, it's quite easy to do your own repairs, and parts and manuals are available even through third-party vendors. And hopefully Valve keeps this same ethos for their future hardware. In fact, that's what we're talking about today. In a final story. So half the time with Valve, it's hard to tell exactly what they're up to from a hardware standpoint. A lot of people have been waiting for a new Steam Deck, which seems like it isn't coming anytime soon, but they may actually be working on a brand new hardware device altogether. So a few weeks ago, a new Valve device was spotted in the benchmarking software Geekbench, and it was named Valve Fremont. From what was gathered, it was running a custom AMD CPU, like it literally said custom, an RX 7600 for the GPU, and Windows 11 for some reason. So if that's popping up on Geekbench, then Valve is obviously testing some new hardware. Then last week, it was spotted that Valve had filed a new trademark for the name Steam Frame. And the description of the filing reads as follows. Steam Frame trademark registration is intended to cover the categories of computer consoles for recreational game playing, video game consoles, video game accessories, namely controllers for video games. So when we add together this whole weird Geekbench thing, and then the trademark, it sounds like they're probably releasing a PC that runs SteamOS that of course will be close to a console experience, and they're calling it the Steam Frame. Now the thing that I'm curious about if this is true is where they're planning to land price-wise. The thing with the Steam Deck is it was a handheld PC, which at the time were like super expensive, but it was priced to compete with something like a Nintendo Switch. But a full fat PC can get expensive pretty easily, especially if they're targeting the performance of like an Xbox or a PS5, even with using upscaling tech. So if this does end up being a thing, I'm wondering what the approach would be. Now, if the hardware ends up being similar to what we saw in Geekbench, I can see that being a decent 1080p to 1440p computer, and I can see it costing around $600 to $700, with the appeal being that you're getting a full PC that behaves like a console and fits in a TV stand with the option to put whatever you want to on it. Also, in the PC world, small form factor gaming PCs are pretty expensive. They're kind of like a novelty thing, and I know firsthand as someone who recently built one from an arcade, so that could also be very appealing to the people that are into smaller PCs that fit under their TV. Either way, if this ends up being true and the Steam Frame ends up being a thing, I'm excited to see where Valve lands hardware-wise and what their marketing approach is going to be for this device. So let me know what you think down in the comments. For this to be appealing to you, where do you think Valve needs to land price-wise and performance-wise to get you to say, hey, I would buy a Steam Frame or whatever they end up calling it? Again, let me know down below. And if you enjoyed this video, then make sure to tell a friend, tell a coworker, like, share, and subscribe, and hit that bell notification button thing wherever it is to be notified when I drop a video or a live stream. And always do at least 2 things at the same time.